This is a recording of a talk given by Andrew Keys at a visual comfort wellness event run by Vision Through Colour and Soothe Ocular Spa in May 2025.
If we look at this young lad here, does he look comfortable? Well, I think fairly clearly he's not comfortable, and I think we can guess why not. There's a very loud auditory disturbance going on behind him. It's painful. It's obvious he's got auditory stress. He's in distress from his hearing. And this can be helped by noise-cancelling headphones, loops which go into the ear and reduce the sensitivity, or worst comes to worst, fingers and ears, hands over ears, and just getting out of the situation. There's going to be a few holiday snaps in here. So this is just outside Rothbury, where we used to go camping with young children. Doesn't it look peaceful? And it was, until this happened. And if you've been in Rothbury, that happened a lot. And it really spoiled some of our days, I have to say. So auditory distress, I think, is fairly obvious, can be more subtle, but we can spot it. But how do we know when somebody is struggling visually? And I'm going to suggest that it can be surprisingly difficult. I'm going to look at what influences visual comfort. And for people who don't have eye disease, people who don't need an update to their glasses, there's no other known eye and brain problems with vision, we can think about visual comfort in three areas: glare, flicker, and repetitive patterns. So thinking about glare, first of all, glare sensitivity tends to be reasonably obvious. If you're driving down a country road and somebody comes at you with full beam LED headlights, that's glare. We know about that. But often it's a lot more subtle. So have you thought about your PC? If you sit in front of a computer, are you thinking about the reflections that you might be getting on your windscreen? How comfortable is your visual workstation? Flashing lights, again, if you're somebody who is sensitive to flashing, you're probably just not going to go into an environment like a disco where you've got bright flashing lights. But as well as the flicker that we're aware of, there's actually a lot of flicker around us that we don't know about because we can't see it, and yet it still affects our brain and our eyes. So there's been a move to LED lighting. It's very cheap to run. It seems like a good idea for the environment, and it is. But what about our brains and our eyes? Well, actually, 50% of LED lighting is actually flickering at a level that we can't perceive it, but is actually knocking out the way that we coordinate our eyes and the comfort that we are seeing with. So if you go into a school classroom, this is the environment in which we're trying to teach children to learn to read and write, and it can be really quite problematical. It's not a case of spending more on LED lighting. Some of the more expensive ones are just as bad with the flicker as the cheap ones. So this is quite a problem to track these things down. The way you can look for it, if you're interested, and it can become a bit of an obsession, is if you put your phone video onto the slow-mo setting and take a recording and play it back, you can often see flicker of light. And in fact, I've heard that phone manufacturers are going to stop having that slow-mo setting because people don't like posting on Instagram to see it flashing. And then if you've got colour flashing, it's even worse. As well as that, the brain's sensitive to certain patterns, especially repetitive patterns. I'm going to show a couple of slides that are intentionally quite visually stimulating. So for a couple of slides, and I'll tell you when it's safe to look back, if you've got photosensitive epilepsy or you've got migraine that's triggered by light and pattern, just look away for a moment. So most people would find that at least slightly uncomfortable. It's probably worth saying that some people like the experience of being very visually stimulated, but not a very comfortable pattern for most people. And then highly contrasting colours as well. You can look back now. But it's not just artificial images. This is Newcastle Central Station. You probably haven't looked up, but if you do look up, and if you're somebody that's really visually sensitive, you'll see why it might not be a very comfortable place to be. And the same in the supermarket with lots of artificial lighting. You don't have any control over this. Patterns, repetitive patterns are everywhere. I'm taking you to Amble now. Doesn't that look peaceful? And there's no repetition of pattern there at all. You'd find that quite relaxing unless you're scared of water. If we start thinking about where else these repetitive patterns are, we automatically, I think, will come to the pattern that was formed by text on a page. So it's not accidental that children often start with Comic Sans, because it's in a regular font, it's easier to read, and as we get older, it doesn't necessarily follow that we're ready to move to very repetitive fonts like Times New Roman, which apparently is the most trusted font, but it's also a very difficult one to read if you're visually sensitive. If you are visually sensitive, something like Calibri or Sega UI are more irregular, and therefore they're easier for your visual system to handle. So we've all got some sensitivity to these situations of glare, flicker, and repetitive patterns. A lot of people, it doesn't bother them, but when it really does bother them, that's the condition that we call visual stress. Because of these distortions, because the brain is now getting overexcited in response to these repetitive patterns, we can get some quite difficult distortions going on the page as we look at them. So we often hear in the clinic at Vision Through Colour people saying that words move or they merge. They can get patterns, colours or shapes and shadows appearing in the text. They can get the text standing up in 3D off the page, or words or letters fading or darkening as they look at them. And then obviously this leads to discomfort that can result in eye rubbing, eye strain, blinking, and just bad behaviour and bad attention. We've put together some examples. Apologies at the back, it might not be too clear, but this is an effect that we hear of when people find ribbons appearing as part of the distortions. People might be getting problems with the words bending or bulging in this sort of way. You can imagine reading for a long period of time, if that's your view of the page, is difficult. You can get doubling or overlapping of words. And some people describe a sort of heat wave shimmer on the page, this sort of thing. Some people find that words dissolve, so rather than reading along a line of words, some of them are almost missing. Making sense of that if you're learning to read and write is difficult. So what if we had the equivalent of noise-cancelling headphones so that we could deal with visual stress in an analogous way to auditory stress and distress? Well, the good news is that we do. The colorimeter machine at the back there, we can go to over 10,000 different shades of colour, and when we prescribe the exact colour for that individual brain, we can reduce the distortions and the stress and distress from the visual sensitivity. We've also got in the clinic upstairs at Vision Through Colour an ability to watch how people's eyes move as a result of colour, which can be quite useful as an objective measurement. So here's a lad that came to see us with ADHD. This blue line is us with our infrared technology watching where he's gone to try and read the words on the page. So he's coming to see us because he's getting headaches most days. He's struggling with writing and focusing from the board. He's got sore eyes, he's easily distracted, and he finds the lights bright in the class and he's getting travel sickness. So really quite miserable. He collected some coloured precision tinted lenses from us. We saw him 3 weeks later, and he didn't need any ordinary glasses. His eyes were healthy otherwise. He's more focused at school. He's less distracted. He's not getting any headaches any longer. The lighting's fine, and he doesn't have any travel sickness. So this is a good result. So if we just go back, you can see there he's followed the line of words as he's reading quite nicely. That's how it was before. That's quite a nice objective measure. It's not just people are saying that they feel better, but we can measure their improvement. And we were really delighted because this resulted in a 41% increase in his reading speed, that's a significant functional benefit. So how common is this? So in the general population, it is surprisingly common. So 5 to 20% of the general population have a degree of visual stress. But in neurodivergence, it's much more. So in the broad umbrella of neurodivergence, 30 to 45% of neurodivergent individuals have visual stress. and 69% of ADHDers are reporting light sensitivity. What we find generally is not that people are coming in describing the classic symptoms of visual stress that we've looked at, so much as coming in with this just a sense of sensory overwhelm, sensory overload. They've sort of been told implicitly or explicitly that this is their experience of the world and there's nothing that can be done. If we move over to migraine, one study had shown that 60% of migraineurs reported visual triggers to their migraine, and 45% were saying that flicker was a trigger for their migraine, compared to people without migraine who were saying that about 6% of them said that flicker was a problem for them. Quite interesting study in the US with army personnel who'd had traumatic brain injury, concussion, and were having problems with migraines. So these folks were given precision tinted lenses, and the number of migraines they experienced reduced from 4.8 to 1.9 a month, which I think a migraine sufferer would count as a win. And really significantly, 74% of them experienced no more migraines when they were wearing their coloured lenses. They don't work if you're not wearing them, but when they were wearing them. And generally, life had improved for them. So colour is really key to managing visual stress, but there are other things that we can do to help. So if we're thinking about this repetitive pattern as a trigger, double line spacing, moving things apart, going to irregular fonts, making them bigger, sometimes smaller, but changing the size. Normally bigger is better. Looking at lower contrast, because it's the black and white or high contrasting colours that tend to trigger things. And screen tinters for PCs or on mobile phones, you can often go in and change the background colour. And you get information from us about how to do that if you're interested. So we've said that the majority of people with neurodivergence might have visual stress. We've thought that 60% of migraine sufferers have visual stress. Now do we think we know somebody with visual stress? There's a good chance that we do. It's very common. To our knowledge, there's never been a grading system for visual stress. So we've created one, and what we've got on our website that's free for anybody to use is a set of questions that go around all of the characteristic symptoms and difficulties people have, and plot out on a red, amber, green hexagram how likely that person is to benefit from colour and some visual stress management. This is Catherine. This is Catherine without her precision tinted lenses, so she's struggling significantly there. Lots in the red zone, coming almost exclusively within the green. She's got a little bit of amber. So speak to Catherine about what it's like for her wearing coloured glasses. Louise at the back there, she's wearing coloured glasses for migraine, ADHD, and she's also had a nasty concussion as well. So lots of reasons why she would have visual stress. That is her pattern, very, very firmly in the red. And we've not reduced every area away from the red, but this represents a very significant day-to-day functional improvement for Louise. There's more examples on our website, which is visionthroughcolour.co.uk, but also on all of the leaflets that are around.
If you'd like to know more about our Vision Comfort events or about visual stress, please contact Vision Through Colour on info@visionthroughcolour.co.uk. More resources are available at www.visionthroughcolour.co.uk.